Wrong video. Good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. This is John Paul Wright. I'm coming to you from Tokyo, Japan. Today I'm going to feature Alex from the GEEKFUL channel on this channel in my series, What Does Star Wars Mean to You? I'm featuring Alex today because A, I like his channel of course, and B, he grew up in a Latino neighborhood, and I didn't. I have no experience with that. The neighborhood I grew up in, you know, pretty much all the kids had Star Wars in their VHS, and everyone watched it, everyone knew it. It was just kind of a common thing, even from when I was young in elementary school. But Alex had a different experience than me. So he's going to explain to us what it was like being a Star Wars fan in a Latino neighborhood. So here's Alex for that.
Thank you, Entertainment Hacker. When I think about Star Wars, I think about my childhood. It's the most memorable, nostalgic, and influential piece of American culture from my childhood. And I got to experience that as a kid. When I watch the original trilogy, it takes me back to the 80s. I feel like a kid again. And while I'm not as knowledgeable about everything Star Wars as some other fans are, what I lack in knowledge about the canon, I make up in heart. See, I'm 40 years old. I'm Hispanic, first generation. Why does that matter? Well, as a kid, I was a lone Star Wars fan all the way up through my 30s. And you see, back in my days, being a Hispanic kid in my neighborhood at least, Star Wars was something you didn't get into. I lived in a rough, poor, predominantly Hispanic neighborhood, and we were poor. We lived in Section 8 housing. All the other kids and family members my age were into breakdancing, Chicano culture, you know, lowriders, or they were recent immigrants from places where Star Wars was just not a big deal. Or maybe they didn't speak or understand English, and back in those days, you couldn't just choose the captions option. So most of my family members and friends just didn't care about Star Wars. Adding to that, if you like Star Wars or Star Trek, you were a nerd. And if you do like Star Trek, you are a nerd. What the hell's wrong with you? Another reason why I was alone in loving Star Wars was because most of my friends couldn't afford to go to the movies, or they couldn't afford a VCR, or they couldn't afford to buy cable. They just didn't have access to Star Wars. And for movies to come out on antenna TV, yep, TVs had antennas back in those days, or even network television, it used to take like 5 or more years. So why was I able to watch Star Wars? Luckily, my father worked his ass off. He eventually went on to buy us a nice house in a nice neighborhood, but while he was working for that, he had some extra cash. And he loved, and he still loves, having the latest entertainment equipment. He always had the best and newest entertainment centers out of all his friends and family. I'm talking about like the latest TVs and sound systems. And of course, why have all that with no cable? So I was like the only kid in my neighborhood with cable. The only one with any real exposure to Star Wars. So when Star Wars movies came on, I watched. I was just flipping channels at home and came across Star Wars. It was this different movie. It had really cool characters. They were in space. There were a bunch of cool aliens. They had these cool laser swords. There was this cool guy, a scoundrel with a walking dog as a friend. They had an awesome spaceship, the Millennium Falcon. And the villain, I was so young, I didn't know if he was a robot or if he was wearing a mask. This bad guy was cool as hell. He had this really cool voice and he was basically invincible. None of the good guys could beat him. Oh, and when Darth Vader struck down Obi-Wan, it's so vague to me now. But when I think about that scene and connect it to my childhood, I just remember sadness. Like it was my own father who got stricken down, you know? Then, my favorite movie ever. The Empire Strikes Back, baby. Man, what a time to have been a kid. I'm telling you, to have watched this epic masterpiece as an impressionable young kid, the way it solidified Darth Vader as the greatest movie villain ever. The epic lightsaber battle between Luke and Darth Vader. We find out Vader's Luke's father. Wow. So going back, Star Wars was this different thing that was just different from everything else I was used to and knew. And I loved it. But nobody else around me cared. I didn't have anyone else I could talk Star Wars with. While all the other kids wanted, you know, G.I. Joe and Transformers toys, and I wanted those too, don't get me wrong, I was the only one who wanted Star Wars toys. But they were kind of expensive. And I only ever got one toy. And that's this little guy right here. My only Star Wars toy ever. And I actually have a pretty interesting story about this little guy here. I think I must have gotten him when I was maybe like 6, 7, and it's followed me everywhere I've ever gone. It's really weird. My mom literally thinks it's evil, like it's the devil or something. Because you know, as a small kid, you lose small toys like this. But this one, despite me actually specifically remembering having thrown it across into somebody else's yard and then moving, it turned up like at the new house where we were at somewhere. And it's the same toy because it has this marking here. So it's the same toy. Like I said, I'm 40 years old. I got this when I was around 7. I've moved to a bunch of different places, yet I still have this guy. It's not like I've taken extra special care for him. I mean, since I realized like, hey, this guy's been following me around weirdly. This is the only toy I've never lost. Or if I thought I lost him, he showed up. So now I kind of do take extra care of him. But don't get me wrong. I mean, if I drove in my car and specifically like drove on the freeway and threw him, I'm pretty sure I'm never going to see this guy again. Entertainment Hacker, thank you for having me on. Take it away, my friend. Peace out.
I gotta give Alex a big thank you for sending in that clip. It was a great clip, and you know, like usual in the series, it was something really different. I had Ivan Ortega on here, and he talked about depression. I had Snoke Spinal Tap on here. He talked about losing a friend. And, you know, it's just always something different. It's always something great. So this is really a new spin on this, and I'd love to hear what you guys think of Alex's clip. This is about 10, 11, 12 of this series, so I probably know what Star Wars means to you guys, but if you want to tell me again anyway, go right ahead. That's what the series is about. Or if it's your first time here, yeah, please go ahead, tell me what Star Wars is about. To you. I'm not cutting that out. I'm too many cuts, man. I shot this video like 5 times. Anyway, if you want to subscribe, please click that subscribe button. Community is growing little by little. Got a patron, got the whole setup, nice little community. I will see you next time.